I never thought cleaning could change my life, but that's exactly what happened when I found the letter. My name is Mira, and until last Tuesday, I was just another 17-year-old trying to survive senior year while tiptoeing around my mother and stepfather's rules. I wasn't supposed to be in Derek's study. That room was strictly off limits, but Mom had been on my case about helping more around the house. If you want college money, you need to show some initiative, she'd said that morning, her voice dripping with that familiar passive-aggressive tone. So there I was, dusting his precious mahogany desk when the envelope slipped from between two books. The paper felt expensive, thick, and official-looking with a law firm's letterhead. I probably should have just put it back, but something made me unfold it. Maybe it was the way Derek had been watching me lately, like he was waiting for me to mess up. Or maybe it was because I'd seen my father's name at the top of the page. My hands started shaking as I read. Words jumped out at me. Trust fund, substantial inheritance, monthly disbursements. According to the letter, I should have been receiving money since I turned 16, money my father had left specifically for me. But I hadn't seen a penny. What are you doing in here? I jumped at my mother's voice, nearly dropping the letter. She stood in the doorway, her perfectly manicured nails gripping the frame. For a split second, her eyes flickered to the paper in my hands, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Mom, what is this? I held up the letter. Did Dad leave me money? Give me that. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps, snatching the letter from my hands. You shouldn't be snooping through private papers. Private? That letter has my name on it. It's about my inheritance. Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. Oh, sweetie, you don't understand adult matters. Your father left us in a mess. I've had to use that money to keep us afloat, to give you a good life. Us? The letter says it's mine. For my education, my future. And who do you think has been paying for this roof over your head? Your clothes? That phone in your pocket. Her voice hardened. I'm your mother. I decide what's best for this family. I felt sick. All those times she'd complained about money being tight, about not being able to afford extra tutoring or the art classes I wanted to take. All while she was spending my inheritance. Does Grandma Evelyn know about this? Mom's face changed, just for a moment. Leave your grandmother out of this. And if you know what's good for you, you'll forget about that letter. She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Mira? You're grounded for being in Derek's study without permission. I watched her walk away with my father's letter, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. Being grounded meant I couldn't visit Grandma Evelyn, but Mom forgot about one thing, my weekly tutoring sessions. That's how I found myself sitting in Grandma's kitchen 3 days later, my untouched tea growing cold while I told her everything about the letter. The familiar scent of cinnamon and vanilla that usually made her house feel like home couldn't calm my nerves. I watched her face carefully as I spoke, noticing how she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. When I finished, she just sat there, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times before. You knew, didn't you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Grandma Evelyn sighed, finally looking at me. Your mother made me promise not to tell you. She said it would only hurt you to know about the money when there wasn't any left. But it wasn't her money to spend. My voice cracked. Dad left it for me for college. I know, sweetheart. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I've been putting money aside for you, ever since your mother told me what she was doing. It's not much, but... Wait, I interrupted. How long has this been going on? Since before Derek. She hesitated, then stood up and walked to a cabinet I'd never seen her open before. There's something else you should know. Your father's parents, Walter and Helen, they've been trying to contact you for years. My heart skipped. What? Mom told me they didn't want anything to do with us after Dad died. Grandma returned with a small box, placing it in front of me. Inside were dozens of letters, cards, and even some photographs. They write to you every birthday and Christmas. Your mother. She trailed off, but I understood. More lies. More secrets. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, picking up a recent-looking envelope. Because I'm tired of watching your mother control your life the way she controlled your father's. Grandma's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Walter and Helen are good people. They loved your father, and they want to know their granddaughter. I opened the letter, my hands shaking. Inside was a card with a check, a graduation present, though graduation was still months away. The amount made my eyes widen. They live less than an hour away, Grandma said quietly. I can arrange a meeting if you want. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Where are you? Tutoring ended 20 minutes ago. Grandma saw my face fall. Go, she said, already gathering the letters. Take these with you, but hide them well. And Mira, she caught my arm as I stood. Whatever you decide to do, I'm on your side this time. I should have been all along. I hugged her tight, feeling the weight of the letters in my backpack like a secret weapon. Mom and Derek had no idea what was coming, but for the first time since finding that letter in the study, I felt something other than anger and betrayal. I felt hope. Meeting my father's parents felt surreal. Grandma Evelyn had arranged everything, telling me to meet them at a cafe 2 towns over where Mom and Derek wouldn't accidentally spot us. I almost didn't recognize them, but Helen's eyes, my eyes, gave them away. Mira, Helen whispered, standing up so quickly she bumped the table. Walter steadied her coffee cup, his weathered hands trembling slightly. They both looked older than their photos, but their faces were kind, open, hopeful. We've waited so long for this, Walter said, pulling out a chair for me. I sat down, my throat tight. I just found out about the letters last week. I'm sorry I never. Don't apologize, Helen interrupted, reaching across the table, but stopping short of touching my hand. We know exactly who's responsible. Walter pulled out a thick folder. We've been documenting everything since your father died. The trust fund, the house deed, the monthly statements showing withdrawals. He spread several papers in front of me. This house, the one you're living in? Your father bought it for you specifically. It was meant to be yours when you turned 18. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. What? Jocelyn was only supposed to be the trustee, Helen explained, her voice hardening. She convinced the court she needed to live there to take care of you, but the deed should have transferred to your name next year. I stared at the document, my father's signature bold at the bottom. She and Derek are talking about selling it. Walter and Helen exchanged looks. They can't, Walter said. Not legally, but they've been trying to find ways around the trust requirements for years. Is that why you never visited? I asked. Because of Mom? Helen's eyes welled up. She threatened to get a restraining order if we tried to contact you. Said we were harassing her, trying to poison you against her. We didn't want to risk losing all chance of seeing you. But we never stopped trying, Walter added, sliding another envelope across the table. This is yours. We've been saving for you, separate from the trust fund. For college or whatever you need. I opened it, then immediately tried to hand it back. The check inside had more zeros than I'd ever seen. Keep it, Helen insisted. Hide it somewhere safe. And Mira? She finally took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. We can help you fight this if you want. We have lawyers, documentation, everything needed to protect your inheritance. But it has to be your choice. My phone buzzed, another text from Mom asking where I was. Looking at their faces, I saw features I recognized from old photos of my dad, from my own reflection. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this fight. Tell me everything, I said, turning my phone off. I want to know exactly what she took from me. I couldn't sleep that night, so I did what I always do when my mind won't shut off. I called Lila. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting for me. Your house, she whispered through the phone. Are you serious? I was sitting on my bedroom floor, back against the wall, staring at the deed Walter had copied for me. Everything's been a lie, Lila. The money, the house, even the story about my grandparents not wanting me. Have you heard your mom and Derek talking about selling yet? No, but I stopped as voices drifted up from downstairs. Past midnight, and they were still up. Hold on. I crept to my door, cracking it open just enough to hear Derek's angry tone. We need to move fast. If she's been talking to Evelyn. She hasn't, Mom snapped back. I've been monitoring her phone. My stomach dropped. I'd been using my old phone as a decoy, keeping the prepaid one Grandma Evelyn gave me hidden. The realtor needs an answer by Friday, Derek continued. And we need that money before the audit. What audit? I breathed into my phone. Mira? Lila's voice was urgent. What's happening? They're talking about some audit. Derek sounds scared. More fragments floated up. Offshore accounts, and paper trail, and clean break. Each word made my heart beat faster. I can't wait any longer, I whispered to Lila. If they sell this house, then don't wait. Come stay with me. My parents already said you can. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I need proof of what they're doing. Walter and Helen said they'll help, but I have to be smart about this. Footsteps on the stairs sent me scrambling back to bed. As I pulled the covers up, my door opened. Mom's silhouette filled the doorway. Mira? Are you awake? I kept my breathing steady, pretending to sleep. She stood there for what felt like forever before closing the door. The next morning, I found my laptop missing. It's being repaired, Mom said casually over breakfast. The screen was cracking. It wasn't. And honey, she touched my shoulder as I headed for the door. I scheduled you for extra tutoring sessions. Every day this week. To keep me away from Grandma Evelyn. I forced a smile. Thanks, Mom. That's really thoughtful. Her answering smile didn't reach her eyes. We stood there, two liars pretending everything was normal, both knowing it wasn't. Later, I texted Lila from my secret phone. They're closing in. I need to move faster. Her response was immediate. Whatever you need. I'm with you. I looked at the house, my house, as I walked to school. One way or another, this would end soon. I just hoped I was ready for whatever came next. I knew I was running out of time when I overheard Derek on the phone with the realtor. Friday wasn't just a deadline, it was tomorrow. With Mom monitoring my every move, I had to take a risk. That's how I found myself in the attic at 3 in the morning, using my phone's flashlight to search through decades of forgotten junk. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I moved between dusty boxes. Most contained useless stuff. Old clothes, Christmas decorations, yearbooks. Then I found it. A trunk with my father's name scratched into the leather. The lock was old, but the key Walter had given me fit perfectly. Inside, beneath layers of papers and photographs, I found a leather-bound journal. My hands trembled as I opened it. A noise downstairs made me freeze. Footsteps. Moving toward the attic stairs. I quickly snapped photos of the journal pages, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. The footsteps grew closer. I closed the trunk, locked it, and slid behind a stack of boxes just as the attic door opened. I'm telling you, I heard something. Derek's voice. It's probably just the house settling. Mom sounded irritated. Come back to bed. After what the lawyer said today, we can't take chances. My breath caught. What lawyer? She's 17, Mom snapped. She doesn't know anything. Your mother's been helping her. I saw them together yesterday. What? You said you'd handle the surveillance. I did, but your daughter's smarter than you think. The phrase might have meant something once. Now it just made me sick. Their footsteps retreated, but I waited another 20 minutes before moving. As I crept back to my room, my phone buzzed with a text from Walter. Emergency. Call now. I slipped into my closet, buried under clothes before calling. What's wrong? Derek just filed paperwork to sell the house, Walter said. They're closing Monday morning. But they can't. They found a loophole. Jocelyn's lawyer is arguing that since you're a minor, she has the right to act in your best interest. Once they sell, that money will disappear forever. I thought about the journal photos I'd just taken, wondering if they contained anything useful. What do? We can file an injunction, but we need proof of fraud. Anything showing they knew about your inheritance and deliberately hid it. I closed my eyes, remembering the conversation I'd just overheard. I might have something better. They're meeting a lawyer tomorrow. If I could record them. Mira, that's dangerous. If they catch you. They're stealing my future, I whispered. I have to try. After hanging up, I sat in the dark closet, surrounded by clothes bought with my father's money, in a house that should have been mine, and made my decision. Tomorrow, one way or another, this would end. I just hoped I was ready for the fallout. The recording played through Walter's laptop speakers, filling his living room with my mother's voice. Once we sell, we'll transfer everything offshore. Mira won't be able to touch it. I'd hidden my phone in Derek's study during their meeting with the lawyer. The evidence was damning. They'd admitted to everything. The fraud, the stolen inheritance, even their plans to leave the country. This is exactly what we needed, Walter said, already reaching for his phone. I'll call our lawyer. The front door burst open. Derek stood there, my mother right behind him, both of their faces twisted with rage. My heart stopped. They must have followed me. You stupid, ungrateful child, Mom spat, storming into the room. After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done? I stood up, shaking but refusing to back down. You mean stealing my inheritance? Lying about my grandparents? Selling my house? Your house? Derek laughed, but there was something dangerous in his eyes. You're a minor. You have nothing. She has this. Walter held up the phone with the recording. And tomorrow, the courts will have it too. Mom's face went white. Give me that phone. It's over, Jocelyn, Walter said. You've lost. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Derek lunged for the phone. Walter tried to stop him. There was a crash, a cry of pain. Walter fell, clutching his chest. Grandpa! I rushed to his side as Helen called 911. The recording, he gasped, but Derek already had the phone. Looking for this? Derek dropped it into a glass of water. Oops. It doesn't matter, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I already sent copies too. The slap caught me off guard, my mother's ring cutting my cheek. You ungrateful little liar, she hissed. You're just like your father, always trying to ruin everything. Ma'am, step away from her. A police officer stood in the doorway, hand on his weapon. Behind him, paramedics rushed to Walter. Officer, thank goodness. Mom's voice instantly changed, becoming soft and concerned. My daughter's having some kind of breakdown. She's been making wild accusations. Save it, Helen snapped, holding up her phone. I recorded everything that just happened. Mom's mask cracked. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. But as the paramedics loaded Walter into the ambulance, I realized this wasn't the victory I'd wanted. My grandfather was hurt. My mother, the woman who was supposed to love and protect me, had struck me. And even with all the evidence, there was still no guarantee we could stop the sale in time. I watched the ambulance drive away, touching my stinging cheek, wondering if the price of justice was worth what it was costing me. The hospital waiting room felt like limbo. Walter was stable but still unconscious, and the police had taken Mom and Derek in for questioning. I sat there, holding Helen's hand, when Derek's lawyer appeared. Miss Langston. He looked uncomfortable. Your mother and stepfather would like to speak with you. Privately. Helen squeezed my hand. You don't have to. But I did. I followed him to a small conference room where Mom and Derek sat, both looking defeated. The lawyer closed the door, leaving us alone. "The police found my journal," Mom said quietly. "The one where I documented everything about the inheritance." "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why did you take everything he left me?" "Because he left me nothing." She slammed her hand on the table. "Your father, my husband, left everything to you. The house, the money, everything. Like I meant nothing to him." "That's not true," I said. "The letters in the attic." "What letters?" I pulled out the journal I'd photographed. "Dad wrote to you every day he was sick. About how much he loved you, how he wanted to protect both of us. The house wasn't just for me, it was for you too. He made you trustee so you'd always have a home." Mom's hands shook as she read. Derek shifted uncomfortably. "I never saw these," she whispered. "They were in the attic?" "In his trunk. The one you never opened." Derek stood abruptly. "This is all very touching, but it doesn't change anything. The house sells Monday. Actually, the lawyer stepped back in. The sale's been stopped. The police found evidence of fraud and with Walter's statement." "Walter's awake?" I started to stand, but Derek's expression stopped me. "This is your fault," he snarled at Mom. "You couldn't just let it go. Had to keep the guilt locked away in some attic." "Don't," Mom warned, but Derek was unraveling. "I did everything right. Managed the money, handled the lawyers. But you couldn't stop obsessing over him. Even dead, he's still between us. Derek, please." "No, I'm not going to prison because you couldn't let go of a dead man." The truth hit me like a wave. "It was you," I said. "You kept the letters from her. You made her think Dad abandoned her." Derek's face went blank. Mom turned to him slowly. "Tell me she's wrong." His silence was answer enough. "Get out," Mom whispered. Then louder, "Get out." After Derek left, Mom and I sat in silence. Finally, she spoke. "I can't undo what I did. But maybe we can try to fix it. Together." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't in years. My mother, broken but real. "I'd like that," I said softly. "But first, there's someone you need to talk to." We walked to Walter's room together, ready to begin again. 6 months later, I stood in the attic of my father's house, my house, sorting through the last of Derek's belongings. He'd taken a plea deal, admitting to fraud and document theft. Mom had filed for divorce the same day. Found another box of papers. Lila called from behind a stack of boxes. She'd been helping me clean every weekend since I moved back in. "Want me to add it to the shred pile?" "Let me check first." I'd learned not to throw away anything without looking through it. That's how I'd found the rest of Dad's letters last month. The doorbell rang. "That's probably your mom," Lila said quietly. Our weekly dinners had started as awkward, silent affairs at Walter and Helen's house. But slowly, something had begun to heal. Mom was in therapy now, working through her grief and guilt. Last week, she'd finally asked to see Dad's letters. "I'll get it," I said, dusting off my jeans. "Can you box up the rest of this stuff for Goodwill?" Mom stood on the porch, holding a familiar leather-bound book. "I found this in my storage unit," she said, handing it to me. "It's your father's journal from his last year." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, in Dad's familiar handwriting, were entries addressed to me. "He knew," Mom said softly. "He knew he wouldn't see you grow up, so he wrote everything he wanted to tell you. About life, love, forgiveness." She paused. "I should have given it to you years ago." "Why now?" "Because you're graduating next week. Because you're becoming the woman he always knew you'd be." She touched my cheek where the small scar from her ring remained. "Because I want to do better." Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat in Dad's old study, my study now, and read his final words to me. The last entry caught my eye. My dearest Mira, remember that the greatest act of love isn't holding on. It's knowing when to let go and when to forgive. Your mother will struggle without me. Be patient with her. And when the time comes, help her find her way back to herself, back to you. All my love. Dad. I closed the journal, thinking about revenge and justice, about forgiveness and healing. The inheritance had never really been about the money or the house. It was about legacy, not just what Dad left behind, but what we chose to do with it. Tomorrow, Mom would come over to help plant Dad's favorite flowers in the garden. Walter and Helen would bring lunch. Grandma Evelyn would probably show up with too many desserts. And somewhere, I like to think, Dad would be watching, knowing his final wish had come true. His family was whole again.